live vocal looping. I try to make music with my voice and this little box called the looping pedal. For those that aren't familiar, you say something into it via a microphone, hit record, and as soon as you push stop, that sound plays, and you can layer on that sound. And I have 5 of these loops in a little box, which is not here with me today. I don't have I'm powerless without my technology. And that performance draws upon elements of comedy, of hip hop, of poetry, and I guess I try to recreate my past existence as a band member in a solo form. Apart from that, I'm also working in education a bit, usually creative arts. I'm attempting to mainly employ myself using my artistic skills, and I also have a background in events management and production.
So what are your thoughts on the whole question of the survival of the arts evolution? What does this mean to you?
Survival brings up many literal thoughts of me trying to earn an income, find a place to live, and survive as an artist in Colombo, who only is fluent in English at the present moment. I'm aware that I have a very small bubble to work with. Education has been a big part of that, and also I guess being open to different forms of creative arts, playing around with some voiceover work or a bit of acting performance here and there. But also trying to encourage a spirit of valuing our work and valuing artists, and trying to encourage other people to charge and keep charging, and encourage employment in that sense.
Okay, so we'll come back on some of those things you spoke about, keeping yourself, surviving for you, because this is your job, this is what you earn living out of. You spoke about value, you spoke about education. We'll come to all 3 of those later. Krishan, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? What is your connection with the performing arts? And when the topic of the survival of the arts is posed, what are the key challenges that you face, or how do you see the problem? Even before challenges, let's talk about some positive things as well.
All right, an introduction about me. I'm a Sri Lankan musician specializing in Tamil rap music. We found Tamil rap music in Sri Lanka in the early 2000s. But my beginning was obviously with English rap music in the late 90s. We had our first original single released in 1998, and from there onwards in 2001 is when we launched our first Tamil rap single called J-Town Story, which was a track about the ethnic conflict. And it was a story about a Tamil boy from Jaffna and the struggles he faced when he came to the city due to his identity. So that was the beginning of Tamil rap music, and I've released 2 albums, one with Universal Music India in 2005 titled Asian Avenue, and then in 2010. I'm a full-time banker right now, 9 to 5, but I also run a production company called Paramount 360, which specializes in audio productions for brands and advertising. And we're also currently into content for labels. We supply content for telcos, so that's a different sort of an element that I'm involved in. In terms of survival, Tamil music industry in Sri Lanka is obviously a very, very small industry, because we're very dependent on South India and the content. When you look at Tamil music markets overall, globally, even in diaspora markets, there is very less opportunities for countries that create Tamil music apart from South India, because of the number of movies and the music that comes out of movies. For a week, we got about 4 to 5 movies being released in South India, and each movie would have about 4 to 5 songs in an album. So in terms of quantity, in terms of quality, there's always a struggle for us as musicians to put out music. So a lot of media stations locally would give you like, say, 90% allocation of South Indian content and about 10% allocation of local Tamil music. So survival, obviously, in different elements is a struggle for a local Tamil musician. In terms of revenue, in terms of financially achieving these, for sustainability of an artist, it's obviously a big challenge. So we'll talk about it in detail.
Thanks, Krishan. Kaushi, would you like to just give us a brief introduction about yourself and then your take on the topic?
Yeah, my passion is performing, acting, but I can't survive by being an actor in Sri Lanka. Maybe if I
if it is politics, you might survive.
This might be a cliche, but if I had better looks, according to Sri Lankan values or whatever, might have been able to survive. And but anyway, I teach because I have to make a living, and also I direct theatre, and I run a theatre school to encourage young people to make good theatre, better theatre, and to experiment, and because theatre is my passion.
Okay, and talking about the very question of survival of the arts, what are the 2 or 3 things that you want to bring to the discussion today?
Yes, it's very difficult today for a theatre artist especially to survive in Sri Lanka, because theatre has become now only entertainment, no artistic pleasure. People don't expect, or they don't see any value in artistic pleasure, but what they want is mere entertainment. So not all the performers would like to participate in such projects, and so, and also the audience has such a lot of diverse activities today, starting from Hindi movies, Hollywood movies, to Hollywood, and reality shows, and so many things.
And that's an area that's very important, because, like you said, there's a lot of syndicated content on TV. For example, you look at prime time on TV between 8 to 9 or whatever. You've got different country programs, teledramas being dubbed in Sinhala. So what's going to happen to the industry is a question. So there is obviously...
okay, so you're talking about the medium itself, the reachability.
Itself, the
okay, we'll talk about that. Yeah, continue, Kaushalya.
This is a big problem, and even most of the Sri Lankan perform or artists, theatre artists, or let's say movies, and who work in movies or teledramas, they come from the rural areas now, and they come to Colombo, and it's so difficult to survive in Colombo because they don't have a place to stay. They have to eat, sleep, wash their clothes, so many things, and they have to fend for their families as well. As young as they are maybe 17 years, 18 years, because I have a few people, I've kept them in my house and feeding them and teaching them, and what they do is they go for commercials. Now the latest thing is promotions. They live out of promotion. You know what promotions are? They go for to promote McDonald's, stand in front of McDonald's, wear this Mickey Mouse or somebody's costume and jump the whole
the
day.
Roadside promotions.
They don't dance, but they go on jumping from morning 8 to 9, and they're so tired, and they are paid about 2,000, 3,000 rupees. And I have a boy who is living in my house, whose father is a tree cutter, and he has fallen from a tree and he has broken his leg. This boy is only 18 years. He's fending for the family, and he earns a little bit of money, runs home to Kagal, that kind of. So, and also there's a boy who studied in my, who participated in my workshop, and every Saturday, Sunday we had the workshop, and he didn't have a place to stay. I didn't know this. He lived under in the night, he spent under a street light. He ate out of some, what are these night boutiques, kades, and he slept. I didn't know that for some time, but then he quit because he couldn't, he had to do a job.
Okay, Kaushalya, I'm going to stop you there, and not stop, but take a quick pause. We'll talk about those aspects. But my first question is to you is that end of the day, like in any thing in life, I mean, in the performing arts or in business, there is an audience, and that is your market, so to speak, and you have to find a way to get at your audience, and that's nothing new, and this is from time immemorial. I mean, when Shakespeare was produced in the Globe, the audience would get up and shout at you if you were not good. So there is an element of entertainment in the performing arts. So not so sure, Kaushalya, whether when you say the audience is something, but that is your audience. How would you react to that? And also the others. Because you see, you can't have an intellectual audience. You can't say, I want an audience that understands this. That is your challenge. So how would you respond to, if you want, what is the creative process? I don't want to put words in your mouth. How do you respond if someone said that, well, here's your audience, you find a way to get through to them?
Yeah, I think it's about expectation and value. If the people coming and paying their good money today to hear us talk, and if we just gave like some very formal PowerPoint presentation, then I'm sure they would walk away disappointed. But I guess it's a double-edged sword, because you can't, in terms of maybe more in the context of a dramatic performance or a theatre performance, you can't necessarily pander to the popular expectations and purely create entertainment.
No, I'm not saying that you should cater to them. I'm saying, but that is an audience. You can't pick and choose, or maybe you can.
Yeah.
But how do you break through this problem? That's what I'm getting at. You cannot expect the audience to change. It is through your creative work that you need to find an audience. You may not find a universal audience, but you will have to find an audience if you are to survive. Because your art will not survive if you didn't have an audience, whatever that audience might be. How do you find that audience? What is the process? What is it that you need to do as performing artists to get at that audience?
Well, I mean, if you look at the audience, there is an evolution of audience right now. I mean, obviously, from what we used to listen to and what we listen to today has changed. Take rap music for examples. I mean, the whole wordplay, the whole poetry of rap music has changed to very basic lyric. I mean, even from the musical point of view, it's very plastic rap music is what you listen to today. But I mean, obviously, as an artist, you've got to evolve as well. You've got to evolve with the listener as well. If you are going to be, from a commercial point of view, you will need to evolve as an artist to serve that taste palette, right? So because that's in demand right now. So you need to supply to that demand. But at the same time, from a creative point of view, you've got to strike that right balance. You've got to have that creativity in your music, at the same time also be appealing to a modern audience. Reaching out to them, obviously, there are so many mediums right now to reach out to them. It's just that your content has to be outstanding, or it has to break through that clutter. So that's
okay,
up to an artist.
So you're talking about medium. Okay. Kaushalya, do you want to respond
actually,
to this?
I would like to say, I mean, what you said was you have to find a way to strike a balance, as well as to create something out of the box and attract the audience in a way, because now today what has happened is they say it's after the war, they have gone through a lot and a lot of stress and all that. They don't want to listen to any deep conversations about life or about politics or anything like that, but they want to is laughter. Most of these civil servants, bankers, big organizations, Lions Club, all these people want very slapstick kind of theater. They don't want any deep discussion, people talking. Let's say if we say the play is a translation of Ibsen or anybody or Garcia Lorca or somebody, they don't want that kind of theater.
Sorry, I understand that.
Yeah.
That's sponsorship. So I'm still on the topic of how do you break this problem of this audience that you are seeing as not being appreciative of what you call interesting performing arts. How do you find an audience?
Yeah,
What is it that you are going to do? Now, rap, for example, they found an audience. They created an audience through the anger of the African American people. They moved from hip hop to rap, and there's very little musicality in that sense. It's not music as we know it, but they created a kind of music and a big wide audience. My question is, how would you find that? What is the process? What is the approach you take to find an audience?
It's very difficult to because do it in isolation, because only theater cannot do it alone. I think even the teledramas, the movies, and all these things have to support. Because all these three mediums they have a link, and when the teledramas are so weak and so silly, what happens is the audience expect the theater also to be very let's say silly kind of stories and acting, and they want people from the teledramas, the stars, to act on the stage. So what they expect is that, not any kind of challenging plot or something like that. But anyway, I think as theatre artists, we have to make a break by attracting the young audience through changing the style, the structure, and also the topics that we are dealing with today.
Right. Larry, yes, I was just going to turn to you.
Another element.
How do you see this as, I'm just still on the question of reachability,
Sure.
The audience first, and then we'll get to that, because that's where the biggest problem lies, I believe.
Sure. I guess you could say, like, hip-hop is finding these people, but also these people are finding hip-hop, and it seems to me from in somewhere like Colombo, if you keep doing your thing, you can build an audience around that. If you keep doing your thing, keeping it consistent, you can build an audience around that. And one of the most successful independent events I know of is this thing called the Melomatic Sessions. Can you help me out here? It's about 3 or 4 years old. Is that right? Got some heads nodding. That's good. And they packed out a massive room. I don't know, 5 or 6 times this depth, and they're dealing with they've got a background that's more in less in original music and more in covers, but they are encouraging that they do have they require you to play at least one original music song now, and it was just a great environment to be in, like just have that amount of people, and even they themselves, the organizers, were just like, whoa, there's so many people in here. There was only so many cushions and beanbags for them to sit on. So I think alternatively there is that model as well. Just keep doing your thing, keep it scalable, keep it appropriate. Then as that audience grows, then you can build with it.
Okay, so coming to you, Krishan, where do you find that balance between just moving the subject a little further away to bring the commercial side? How do you find that balance between serving an audience that you think you want to reach or extend your reachability, and striking a balance between the commercial aspects of doing this? Because taking Kaushi's point, I mean, you can do a nice piece of theater. She's saying, I'm afraid that I won't be able to grab the crowds. We'll put that aside for a minute. How do you, as an artist, find that balance between what you want to do and say, and how do you make it commercially viable?
Yeah, the whole commercially viable thing is obviously something that any artist would look at mainly, because obviously if you want to be sustainable throughout a longer period of time, you need to have something that's commercially viable. Striking the right balance is obviously, from an artist's point of view, keep his content relevant. I mean, obviously the creative side of it doesn't need to be compromised to a large extent. If you're a rap artist, obviously your lyrical ability, the depth of your content needs to be there. At the same time, if the style of music has changed, now say hip-hop music is slowly converting into like forms of dance music, and there's a bit of elements of EDM and all that coming into hip-hop music. But yeah, so that's right. You've got to keep it relevant with time, with the consumer's taste palette. At the same time, have your identity, have your creativity, and strike that right balance.
Okay. Going back to the creative side now, the power of creation, where do you find inspiration? In the context that we are living in, you are in Sri Lanka, where do you find inspiration for your work?
Before that,
Yeah.
I would like to say something. I'm sorry that I'm talking about the problems of the Sinhala theatre only.
No, this is also true of English theatre.
Yeah.
I mean, there's theatre and theatre.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead, please.
Yeah. The other thing, now at least English theatre, I mean, everybody comes, whoever who wants to see the play. I mean, let's say if Steve produces a play, they would come to Bishop's College. If it is at the Bishop's College, they will come to Bishop's College to see the play. Now, in our case, we have to take, it's a mobile theatre. We have to take the theatre to the people.
Okay.
From area to area. Okay. There we are at a loss because we can't take the play. It has to be organized by an organizer, is a commercial person. What he takes is the plays that can be sold. Those who have those plays that stars are acting in. So at that point we are at a loss, and whatever we do, it has to be really so I mean those people in the villages, what they want to see stars, not theatre. They don't know what good theatre and the difference. So what they ask is, who are the stars? Now, we have my mother's play, Vikurti, we take it to the other. They come and ask, who are the stars? No stars in our play. What we say is, first watch the play and just then we'll talk about the stars.
Okay, so yeah, that's about space. But Steve is in the audience, and I can tell you that it's not as easy as you think it is for him,
yeah,
because
I know.
His kind of theatre is also very special.
Yeah, I know.
And incidentally, and I don't want to have this conversation about you, Steve, but the fact is that he did find it difficult to find sponsors for 2 plays that he wanted to do recently, and he couldn't do it. So it's not necessarily a single theatre problem.
No. Yeah,
it's a problem for serious theatre.
Yeah,
But, okay.
Can I hear about this taking the theatre to the people? That happens? Do you physically take?
Yeah, what we do is we hire a bus, we take the sets, people, everybody. If it is in Munaragala, we have to leave at about 5 o'clock in the morning. Then we go and set the lights from the cyclorama to the main curtain. Everything has to be fixed, and then the actors have to sit in the bus or in the hall. Sometimes there are no washrooms, but you have to sit in some school somewhere under a tree, and then once it's about 12 o'clock, we have our lunch inside the bus, some seat or somewhere dusty place, and then we are being made up, and we have to give the same performance that they expect. We do in Colombo at the Lionel when they expect us to do the same performance there.
Yes, you have a particularly difficult problem that Steve does not have. Yes, I agree. Steve doesn't have this problem yet. So
under a tree.
Yeah. Sorry, but Larry, you were going to say something about.
I was?
Yeah, I don't know. Were you? No, you were not.
He asked a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, about the creativity, the how you get the inspiration.
Yes, coming back to the question on inspiration.
Topic, yes. Inspiration. Immediate environment and direct personal experiences. That's been the thing for me. I tend not to not to get obsessed with like researching some topic and Googling everything and having facts and figures in my lyrics and content. First-hand experiences tends to be the obvious choice that moves me.
So is it the music that inspires you? Is it the language? Where does this come from? Because yours is a very particular, special type of art. I believe there's a kind of language that you use. Where do you find that?
I guess the language, for me, they're little musical stories, they're little tales that you can enjoy telling again, and paint the picture of that experience. I have some tales from my journey traveling here, some from Australia.
Yes, he'll demonstrate a little later. We'll play a video, but we'll come to that. Krishan, for you,
You will too.
how do you have a big challenge. You're talking about the challenge that comes from South India, and you're talking about not just having that airtime, but you still have to find a way of creating something that's different to what's happening, because you can't do this through regulation. I mean, we would like it to be, say that we'll have only, maybe it's a combination of, because you could have regulation, but no one will listen to you anyway if you turned it all off, if you turn the South Indian music off. So how do you find, what do you look for when you're trying to create something that's different, that differentiates you from this massive competition that you have from India or wherever?
No, initially, most of the music that we were doing was based on, like Larry said, first-hand experiences in life. I mean, it's generally stories that you experience, and that's what you tell through your music. But at the same time, my recent music has been subjects that has some sort of social message as well. I did a track about domestic violence against women. That was a topic that I picked up recently on a song called Vendum Vendam. Then also I'm working on something on human trafficking right now. And then there's some inspirational messages, which I recently released a song with an Indian singer called Haricharan, which is about motivation and believing in yourself. So I mean, generally there's a bit of a social message in my music, and I basically inspire myself through listening to all sorts of music, not just sticking to one genre of music, which is hip hop. I listen to a lot of world music. I listen to a lot of classics from South India. Lot of different rap music from different parts of the world, just to get an idea of what people are listening to. So I mean, it's a wide area of experiences that you gather when you're making music.
Okay, I think we've been chatting for about half an hour now, and we'll turn it over to the audience for a few questions, and then maybe we can come back to some of the other things we want to talk about. Questions from the audience, please. Yeah, they'll get a mic. That's Arun. Yeah.
Hi. I guess my question is related to what Larry sort of picked on about, and we talked about this idea of survival as an artist, particularly in Colombo, and which is something that a lot of us in the audience do. And I think we've talked about this a lot, but I wondered whether anyone on the panel, yourself, Peter, as well, had any idea of one of the hardest things, I think, is the perception of what an artist does, right? It's that people don't necessarily place a value on your work as your working hours. So when you're asked to make something, you're asked to make it on a budget, and that budget goes into, I mean, even as much as I have enjoyed Cinema and Colomboscope, even the artists who have taken part in the art thing have a limited budget, which just pays for the materials that they use. It doesn't pay for, say, their livelihood or their living, and oftentimes that's the struggle that you have to convince people, organizations that you work for, that you also have to be paid a salary of some sort, because you do have to go home and eat and live, and all your energy needs to go into this work, so the money needs to cover that. And I wondered, and I think that's the thing that's often missing in terms of arts funding and when we receive funding to make things. And I wondered whether anyone in the panel had ideas or had suggestions or ways in which we can change that attitude, that viewpoint.
Kaushi or any one of you would like to take a stab at that? We were going to talk about that.
Also very rich in thought on this one. Something I've thought of working on with the collective, try to work on and develop a document that sets out standards. If no one's going to, no industry is going to set the standards for us, let's try and set some standards that, and try to figure out some ways where you can figure out some, for a day's acting, there is this industry standard rate for a single music performance, which takes into account your sound checking, bringing equipment, all those things that happen before you step on the stage, and you can look at that as a minimum.
I think the question also, Arun, from your point was, how do we find this money? Not if he's talking about a certain rate.
No. I mean, he was kind of answering it, but
okay.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, fine. Go ahead. Yeah.
I guess just. I guess it's also an education campaign in itself, because so often it's just, oh, can you come just do this thing? You know, you're a musician. You just.
Well, Larry, the problem is that when you start putting out demands like that, they generally try to avoid your music. Now, say for example, we don't get paid royalty for our music on radio, whereas like radio stations are making millions out of advertising revenue, right? Say they make about 10-15 million per radio station on advertising revenue. What do they run on? They run on content, right? The moment you go up to them and say, okay, give me a share of my royalty, they're like, no, we don't want to play your music.
Currently, what is the royalty they would pay you? Just as a...
It's 30 rupees per airplay, which is I think that was the mandate that passed, 30 rupees per airplay. Then that has to be divided into three. That's the songwriter, the lyricist, and the composer.
So how much is the...
So that's 10 rupees per person per airplay, right?
Is that a few decades ago?
And then you've got to wait for this report to be submitted, and then you've got to wait for your paycheck and all that nonsense. So it comes to that. So the media stations are in a very demand. The media stations are in a very demanding position, saying, if you like it, we'll pay your content. But like you said, in today's world, there is different avenues and the different platforms for us to take our music out, right? We've got content aggregators out there. There are platforms, streaming platforms out there. There are royalty collection societies out there, which we need to tie up. We need to understand the whole publishing business. In terms of music, you need to understand the publishing business and see where can you make revenue. And you got to get that framework or that ecosystem in place as an artist when you go out. So I mean, once you know the business and how it works, then you can start demanding a certain amount of value for your music.
Kaushi, would you like to... Because you have some experience of working with the state and with various people who came into power to try and get some attention to funding, to state funding of the arts.
Yeah,
what has been your experience?
Yeah, it's like this. I mean, most of the people who come to me for movies, etc., they say, Akka, this is low budget. So what I do is, so why do we are struggling with, I say, why do you struggle? So just don't do it. You find the correct amount of money, but if they don't at least do it that way, there won't be any movies, young people won't be able to do any movies in Sri Lanka. So it's a real struggle for them. So I don't know. Now, if I say no to somebody, as he said, there are 10 people to come and act free of charge. So there are very few people would come and say, Akka, we want only you. I mean, you are the person for this character, kind of. So I don't know how far this is going to work, but at least we must have an actors guild or some union where they say, I mean, this is our
the artists are protected in some sort of a association or a union, a sort of.
Yeah.
But every artist needs to work collectively for that. You can't have different interests. I mean, you can't have a biased interest towards your well-being and not bother about another fellow artist. It's got to work collectively, and I think that's very important.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Kaushi, you want to say something else?
I've never played an actor.
Right. So, yeah, but in the Sinhala theatre, actors have to be paid. So,
Everybody else gets paid.
That is the point you were making when we were discussing, Larry. And
No, because sometimes they call us for a charity show.
Yeah, this is interesting.
Yeah, they call us for a charity show. Say, Machan, it's a charity show. Machan, can you perform free? And then okay, so they pay the lights guy, they pay the production guy, the sound guy, all of that. But it's creativity versus production, and they pay the production guy and not the people who actually perform or bring the crowd for that show. So that's how bad it is.
We love our production in Colombo.
Any other questions from the audience, please? Yes, Mannequin.
Hi. Two questions, actually. The first question is with regard to the fact that, so you say there's creativity and you can't go, like, you have to do slapstick theater and all of that. One thing is the quality of theater is very subjective, right? Serious theater and what is considered good theater or good art for that matter is actually very subjective. So if the market is demanding something else and you believe that your art is better than what the market is demanding, what do you produce? Which is more important? That's one question. The second question is when it comes to art and business, the whole thing about like a bottom price and people undercutting you and doing it free of charge. So that's the business of art, right? In that case, everything goes. Like if there is someone who can do it for cheaper, well, that's business. So where do you draw the line on? Is it business or is it art, or how does that work?
Difficult question, I don't know, difficult in sense. Now, I mean, just because the audience asks for slapstick and that is the majority, what the majority asks for, do we give that, and what would be the outcome of it ultimately? And ultimately now, I know there's a Sinhala theatre group, there are a few friends, 6 of them, everyone writes a play every year, whether it is good or bad, because they are stars, they produce it, and every year it is the quality of theatre is going down of their productions. So, but still people come to see, as long as they as they enter the stage. From the time they enter the stage, people laugh. Whether they do a serious role or not, they start, because they have seen them on television doing comedy. So whether they are doing a serious role or not, they start laughing. So, I mean, this is what, just because they ask for that, should we give that? Where do we draw the line, as you say? And I think the government should support, there should be some support system. This has been the case for the last 30 to 40 years. People, artists have been talking about this, but nothing has happened. Still, the problem is the same. I mean, there should be some support system where the theatre is being supported by the government or some private organization that have, like the Ford Foundation or some foundation, where we every year certain theatre directors are given some.
But Kaushi, I understand what you're saying, but just so that we don't throw everything back at someone else. I mean, people like Prasanna have been able to, they make good films, they make critical films, and they have been able to find the money. But is it something that we're doing fundamentally wrong and blaming other people for this? Are we not able to make a compelling case, so to speak? This is, how are you going to change this?
But then, how do you say, what is, I mean, who says that he has found the money? I mean, he's got the money back. He has a name. Obviously, he has made a name for himself. He's doing good films. No, please, no, I'm not. No, I mean, you can, I mean, what I think that
sure,
his
sure,
best
sure.
film
Just,
was...
you don't have to explain.
Yeah,
Just go on.
best film was Pauru Alalu. I mean, after
Not
that...
Iramadiyam.
No. Sorry, no.
I'm just joking.
Right. So, it depends again on some audio,
Yeah, that's okay.
yeah.
Let's
So,
continue.
anyway, coming back to...
I mean, he does find the money to make bigger and better productions.
No, not bigger and better. But now his, how do you say, this latest film, he has only 4 or 5 actors. And it's very...
I'm saying he doesn't have the problem of money. He can edit the film in India. He can do it on very good quality film.
That is because I think, it's very difficult for me to answer that question when it comes to movies. Because still now a person like Vimukti, it's difficult for him to, I think, find funds. And Prasanna is the only one who has the luxury. I mean, I don't say it's hard work. Going from one movie to other, he somehow has a project. But not everybody. Now, Satyajit did his movie 10 years ago, and it was released recently. I don't see even there's anybody to produce another film for him. So in Sri Lanka, it's very difficult. I think it's because it's a small country and very few companies or producers to take the risk of producing a movie of that quality.
In response to his question, I mean, how much of a businessman have you got? You have to have some sense of how to make this work, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And how do we break through this problem?
Well, I don't think playing it safe or just keeping it popular is the only way. Like we're artists, we're creative, and people and audiences respond to things that are daring, things that are vulnerable, things that are innovative that they haven't seen before. And so how can you do that if you just create safe sort of sausage factory output of your work? You have to experiment, you have to explore things, and hopefully they'll forgive you when it goes wrong, but when it goes right, it's great.
Krishan, have you got to say something about this whole question of commercial versus how to make it work, how to find the money?
Peter, because since we want to be artistic, we want to be creative, that's the reason we're doing 9-to-5 jobs, running different, like, sort of a business just to fund our music and our creative work. But if you want to make it worthwhile or make it work, you've got to compromise certain... I mean, you might have to compromise on the creativity a bit. You can't make it too complex, because when you start putting out like deep subjects and all that, you would only have a niche sort of a following, right? But obviously, the business side of it comes with the numbers. Even if you go to a sponsor, they want to say, okay, how many views do you have on YouTube? How many likes do you have on Facebook? What's my return on investment? What sort of KPIs can you deliver on my investment? I mean, and getting a decent production is not cheap. I mean, Ilango knows, he's in advertising, and I mean, it's not easy getting a video done today in today's context of music videos. If you want to do a very outstanding music video, you've got to spend millions. Where are you going to find those millions? You need to go to corporates. You need to go to brands. And when you go to brands, then they're obviously going to ask you, what's my return on investment, right? So if you want to be creative, yes, you could be creative, but then you've got to get some sort of funding, probably from the state to keep your music or your livelihood supportive. But if you want to be commercially successful, you've got to have a lot of business sense into it. You've got to drive numbers to make your music successful.
Who is funding this in the singular pop scenes, like these massive productions?
Yeah,
these
so
drone
you got different brands. You got FMCG brands. You got different sorts of service brands that want to reach out to a certain consumer segment. So maybe, Larry, you spoke to a 15 to 30-year-old SEC, whatever, B or C or A. And this brand wanted to speak to your consumer, they would use you to speak to that consumer. You get me? So they would spend some sort of investment on your production, and in return get their brands promoted. So that's generally the formula.
And so is that like a product placement sort of
Product
deal?
placements can be there. They can use you as an icon, an ambassador. There are different ways we make money out of brands.
Okay. I'm sorry to cut you guys.
Yeah,
but, just another
because-
question from the audience, Kaushalya,
Before that, I
No.
want to say, I want
No,
to
no, no,
fight
no, no.
and say,
The audience is very important. Now see, this is why they don't get
artist is
funding.
more important. The
Because
artist
they
is
don't let others speak.
Facilitator respect, facilitator.
okay. I give up.
Thank you. Yes.
Just hold that thought.
Yes, they are paid money. They have to be given, you see, you don't trust your audience. Okay, sorry, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no.
There are a number of questions. Yes. Yes.
Some hands.
There's one mic, I believe, and there's one question here and another one over there. Yes. Go ahead.
Mine is actually not related to the business of arts, but I would just want to go back to something that Kaushi said about taking, building audiences and taking singular theatre to the people and how difficult it is. I just wanted to know, Janakaraliya do that, and I just wanted to know how they do that, because that's their business, is to take mobile theatre, right?
Yeah, you want to know how they do it?
Yeah, just wondering.
They were funded by one NGO, and they built this big, what do you call it, Peter? Some kind of, circus tent, and it's very practical, and they take the whole construction from one area to the other, and then they have a theatre festival going there and a workshop and etc. So which also needs a lot of funds, because we have to get a lot of theatre groups to now latest recently they had it in Halavata or someplace, so they had to take theatre groups there and accommodate them, and then get them to play 3 shows, maybe 4 shows. We had a children's play recently, we played there, and we had to do 4 shows for them to collect the money to pay us. So just imagine doing 4 shows and in the hot sun, and not under a roof, I know, but then it's very, very warm these days. So that is how they do. But that's very, very interesting way of doing it. But not all plays can be done that way. Not all productions. Some productions can, especially folk theatre kind of stuff can be done there. But some productions cannot be accommodated in the Janakaraliya.
Kashi, was that four plays in one day? Like 4 performances in...
Yeah, I mean, our children's theatre, we do children's theatre, and they take them to schools, and not now, because there are so many things to tell you, but it's no time regarding theatre. So we have to do 4 shows a day in order for them to pay us. But an actor is paid only 3,000 rupees a day. Our productions, we can pay only 3,000 rupees a day an actor for playing for the day.
There's a question here.
Yeah, I was just listening to all of you all talking, and I realized that we have an industry here, an entertainment, artistic industry, drama industry. But it doesn't seem to be organized enough to give a living wage, to encourage more people to get into the arts, and also provide something that citizens of any country needs, a space for discourse, a space for exploring different ideas. And I don't know whether you all saw, I was reading the newspapers today, and they said that this national government has been formed, and some of the points that they have formed on, one of the points which was very, very interesting to me was promotion of the arts. And I thought, this is really weird. Where have I seen this before? And I would encourage you all to just look at it and see what they mean by that. And the fact that young people like yourselves are talking that we need to form a collective, we need to form a guild, maybe this is a time that you need to get together. The Sinhala theatre, the English theatre, the musicians, even with the media stations, and really chart out, because otherwise you won't be seen as an industry. It is an industry. It is providing a product for people. We need to define it, and we need to put a market value on it. You know, it's so sad when you hear people like Arun who've studied so much and they're so talented, and they say nobody recognizes the effort we put in. A mason is paid 2,000 rupees a day, right? A university student who does his first job gets paid. Why shouldn't an artist get paid something? There has to be a value, and you need to define it and not be pushed around. So this is my question, is the industry has to organize.
Yeah, just to, can we create firstly an industry that will come together? I mean, all these artists with these problems are functioning on their own, whereas other companies and other interests form industry, like the tea industry, the apparel industry, and so on. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, but it has to start, like you said. I mean, if the government has a vision in that nature, I think they should actually do the initial rounds of setting things up.
No, that won't happen, Krishan. That's
because
not
I'm sure we've all had this discussion before.
Yeah.
We've all spoken about forming an association or a union for musicians, probably for other performers. But I mean, it never took off. I mean, even this whole royalty collection thing, no one's actually monitoring it. No one's actually regulating it. If some station wants to pay it, they'll pay it. Some stations don't even bother about it. So I mean, there has to be some sort of strict law in place, or some sort of regulation that will control and protect the interests of artists. I think that has to start.
That will only happen, and that's the point she's making, it will only happen if you come together and form a sizable, formidable organization. Without that, you will not have the lobby to go behind the government and say, let's do this. Arun can't do it on his own, Kaushi you can't, Steve can't. Larry, so is there any moves, have you seen over the past years, in Sinhala theatre and Sinhala music and so on, any attempt to come together as artists to form a lobby? And how successful have you been? Or obviously you have not been very successful, and why not?
After the 8th of January, the Sri Lankan theatre artists got together and we formed this organization called NAFTA.
Why the 8th of January? Why the 8th of January?
Because before that, it was even unheard of, because we couldn't even reach the higher-ups, because there were some artists who were advising them. Some other, so we couldn't reach them, and so we have formed this organization and we are working on it. It's Sri Lankan theatre. We are Tamil, Muslim and English, and even Ruanti, and some people are also in the panel, board, whatever. So we are trying to organize and talk to the people, and they are making a policy on theatre and how to a national policy. They are trying now these days to. So, I mean, there might be a good result. There might be. Yeah.
I feel like maybe we could start it, and then it would need wider support.
Okay, you had to wait for someone to start it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well.
Okay. Question. Sorry, there was a question back there first, and then I'll come to you.
Sorry, it's me. So in the current musical climate, people seem to be streaming music, say through Spotify, than actually investing in it. And especially here, people seem to download it illegally from the internet than actually buy music, say from iTunes. So what do you think is the solution to that, to get the message across to people, to say, hey, we're artists, we need to make a living as well?
Yeah, that's right. So obviously, we had the whole physical retail, then it moved to digital retail. Then from digital retail, now we're moving into streaming music. So obviously, the whole revenue model has changed completely. And from what you made on a CD, then you would drop down to 99 cents per single. And now it's even smaller than that, right? Streaming revenues are very limited. So it's come to a point where you've got to push your content to your markets You got to make money mainly through performances. That's how a lot of artists are making money, because so, I mean, all this digital retail, the streaming, and all that gives you very limited money. And when you look at YouTube's revenue model, where they place Google AdWords and they do campaigns, they give you a portion of the ad revenue to you. I think 60% of it to the artist or the content owner. 60%.
60.
Yeah, which is a fair model. So whatever ad revenue they make, they give back to the artist. But for that, your channel needs to have X amount of views. You need to have 100,000 views, or every 200,000 views there's a little amount they allocate for your channel. But so obviously the revenues, the avenues are getting very small and limited. And for you to be very popular, you've got to spend a lot on promotion. I mean, you take Facebook for an example. You start a page, and you've got to start paying for your own posts. Right? It's a pay-per-play model right now on Facebook, where they've reduced the 20%, 15% organic reach to 3% right now. Right? So it's becoming very monetary based, and you've got to create content that will engage, create virality, create organic sort of growth, and that's a challenge everybody's facing right now in today's environment.
I think it's very different in a country where people have grown up with no real copyright laws, and then suddenly to be convincing them to say, oh, you need to buy music. There's some models that are going around that. There is Bandcamp and that sort of thing, but it's a very tricky one. But I think, yeah, like we keep finding time and again, the live music scene, there's a recent stat from Australia that the live music scene is worth $1.5 billion. And so everyone's sort of like, oh, slight pat on the back. It's kind of like, we told you so. We told you it was a valuable thing. So I guess we just need to keep trying to push the live music and figure out this funny business of, in Colombo, we're still selling CDs sometimes. Like there's that gap between physical and digital that we haven't really bridged, and streaming, it's not fully integrated here, but it's a bit of a vague area.
Okay, one more question from the audience, and I'd like to move to another. Yes, that's you, Freya. Okay. And your question first, because you put your hand up first. This question over here, and then we move over there to Freya, and then we'll come back. We'll move away from the commercial and talk a little bit about the creative, the collaboration between different art forms.
I'm Stephen, and my overall impression attending these events is that this is the most articulate group of people I've ever listened to.
They're artists.
Okay, so you've got your answer. You've got your lobby right here in this room. Where is all this energy? Why is all this energy not being all this beautiful art? You guys express yourselves so very, very well. Why aren't you forming yourselves into a lobby, a formidable body that will fight for what you guys are talking and arguing about? I mean, I don't think there's any group that can speak for itself like the group right here, or that has been attending. You panelists, questions and answers, you people are your own promoters. So for heaven's sake, get together, band your energy, get your energies together. Your collective is right here in this room.
Stephen, you actually said it. You said you're your own promoters. And that is where the problem is. They are probably promoting only themselves. And my question was going to be around that. So we'll have someone answer that question. And what I want to come back to is this question of collaboration. I get the feeling that performing arts, people in performing arts seems to be the most, shall I say, what's the word I'm looking for? Caught up in only what they are doing without seeking to collaborate. Parochial, shall I say, for want of a better word. We are not seeing collaboration. And the only way we can make things better is by collaborating. You can't create it yourself, and you can see that in the business world, you can see in the smart artistic world. They're collaborating with business, they're collaborating with other organizations, with government, and they are not even you are not even collaborating among yourselves. So in response to that question, and then we can take this discussion in that direction if you wish.
Well, Peter, we can argue on that point because we've collaborated with different languages. Now, when you look at our music, we've had trilingual music. We've had 3 languages on one song. So we've collaborated with like artists from different, like the Sinhalese music sector. Then obviously we've collaborated with people from the region. We worked in like South Indian movies, taking our names out there. So I mean, obviously, like you said, collaboration is obviously the way forward to take your music across. And I think, I mean, we are doing it from a music point of view. From a theater point of view, I wouldn't know, Kaushi. Does it happen?
What do you mean by collaborating?
Okay, for example, will you walk out of this hall today and sit with Arun and say, let's see, you and I seem to have the same type of problem, without saying, oh, you're from Sinhala English theater, you have a, can you break this? And really take the initiative to look around, who are the people who are seriously interested in serious theater, and then find a way to talk to each other and say, let's sit down. Now, a simple thing like space for rehearsals. Each of you are struggling on your own, but you have never reached across, so to speak, and look at other people and say, my God, there are 5 groups that I can relate to. These people are serious. I'm going to have a conversation with them and get them together and say, without only thinking of your group and Arun thinking of his group and someone else thinking of their group, is there an attempt to come together to address a big problem? Start with a smaller problem. Rehearsing space for rehearsals. And that's the point Stephen is making.
Yeah, in a way it's true. We haven't discussed in that sense. But as I said earlier, that with that organization we have formed, we are trying to address most of these problems that everybody is facing, rehearsal space, etc., for actors to come and for lodging, and a lot of things are going to be addressed, and we are looking at it. But as you said, it's, I mean...
Who is we? Only you?
No. Yes. There are some other artists as well.
Secret organization.
No, it was quite advertised. It was in the papers. It was in the news. But we are still. But as you said, now next meeting I'm going to take this whatever the discussion we had and talk about it. And actually, there is a real shortcoming in that. I know. Yeah.
Freya, your question, yes.
Yeah, mine actually kind of connects to the idea of collaboration. I was thinking more about in terms of language. When we're talking about audiences, a lot of the time the audience is very language specific. So the Sinhala theatre will have a very Sinhala speaking or people who understand and appreciate the language more. I was just wondering about the whole idea of crossover. Krishan talked about collaboration and trilingual partnerships and things like that. But crossover in terms of a market as well, how can you, I mean, if you want to expand your market, your audience, maybe you should think about crossing over to people who appreciate English theatre, for example, like myself, even though my father is very much into, the Sinhala theatre and movie scene, I'm more interested in the English scene. So how do you I guess, approach people like me and people who are, or say even in the other languages, the people who are more into the Tamil music and the Tamil movies, how do you get them interested in the English side and the Sinhala side and tap into that market as well?
Krishan, you want to, because we spoke about this, about language and crossing. Yeah.
I could just mention it's definitely a barrier, and perhaps more so than it should be. Krishan is only the second Tamil rapper that I've met, and I've met him through the process of this panel, and I just made a few calls to find you. It wasn't that hard, but it wasn't something that I consciously did or would think of doing day to day, even though we are all living amongst this Colombo scene.
If there are other people in the audience who'd like to speak about this, no, not the question, the answer. Oh, okay, sure. Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, the last bit of theatre I saw in London was in Barbican. It was a Dutch performance in Dutch. It was packed, absolutely packed. What they used was multimedia. They had subtitles. It was action. Not only that, there's lots of stuff on the TV which is being communicated across language. Actually, acting is not only about language, but it's also about miming. And there's lots of stuff that goes on at village level, which isn't very high level, but it's fantastic. Circuses. Has anyone been to a Sri Lankan circus recently? The skill level is incredibly high. The humor is amazing. But do you know what conditions they work under? It's actually quite frightening. But they're so skilled that...
Steve, I don't know if you'd like to comment on this, because I remember the one person who did try to bring collaboration between English and Sinhala theatre was Richard. And before that, I think Dhamma Jagoda, and there was some attempt in English theatre at that time.
There always has been.
Okay. But do you see that now, or is it increasingly less so?
There's a lot of trilingual stuff that happens. Theatre, Swampy, Basin, and all of that. But no real elaboration. I don't know.
My mother produced a play that was funded by the British Council, and in that play, it was an English play where even we acted in, and Steve and some British actors acted in that play, and it was quite a success. As you said, the collaboration was quite a success where the audience was concerned, because as you say, I mean, but today...
Well, Kaushi, it's a damn shame, isn't it, that it has someone from Britain has to come down and pull people from the Sinhala and English theatre, and we are so damn sectarian. This is madness, isn't it? It has to be someone from England who has to come, bloody colonialist, and he has to bring Sri Lankan people together.
Yes.
That British Council production had all sorts of people from English and Sinhala theatre, and Hiran was in that, and now he's doing very well. And of course, he started with you, with your group. I must give credit. But and this is the point, isn't it? Really.
Yes, actually, it's lack of communication. Most of it is, as you say, we must get together and talk about it, because we face the same problem in various levels. Like, we think that the English theatre has better funding, better sponsors, and but it's not the same for Sinhala theatre. I mean, it's at various levels. I think we all must come together and find a way of coming out of this big issue. But before I wind...
No, we are not winding up.
Okay.
We have another 15 minutes.
Before I stop, let me say something, because you were talking about Prasanna Vitanage. It's very, he does a lot of hard work, because
is there a but somewhere?
he produced this movie called Akasa Kusum, and he went from, I mean, generally when he produces a film and when it is running, he goes from theatre to see what the theatre owners, what they do is they try to cheat the they say they are running Akasa Kusum, and they show some adults only English movie, and yes, and they get the young people who like to they have no place to go, they go to these boxes, and that is what they do. So one day he went to see this some way out place, and when he went to the theatre, there was a big commotion to see there was a cabaret inside the theatre. A real alligator, and everybody was running here and there, because the theatres are so bad, in bad condition. And in one theatre, when he went, the board was Akasa Kusum, they were showing something else. And so this is how it is in Sri Lanka for when a movie is run, and so everything is a...
So thankfully, this was not a criticism of Prasanna's creative abilities.
How hard it is for a creative person in Sri Lanka.
Peter, can I show you something that was an attempt to bridge that language challenge?
Yes,
gap?
please.
Yes. Moses, do you have the second Thank you.
Thank you.
Representing Stephen, Bob Marley, Michael Jackson,
DJ Boss.
So Larry, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing at the Vajira Home?
Okay, so this is another thing through the collective of contemporary artists. This is something that we consciously do for free. It's a volunteer project. I haven't been able to get there so recently, but members from our collective go usually each week on a Sunday to the Vajira Children's Home in Kotte. And my partner in crime there, Imad Majid, for those of you going to the event later on, he's curating that. He is also a not really Sinhala as first language kind of person, but he had taken prompts from another Sri Lankan musician who had used this poem. Are people familiar with that poem? What was it called again?
The Raban, yeah.
Raban?
You want to talk about that?
Yeah.
So what did they use?
So he used a familiar children's tale, a poem, I believe?
Rabang poem. Yeah. Rabang poem. It's played on the Rabana, you know, where for the New Year you play that with the hands. So it's a Rabang called Rabang Padaya. Kattak karagena wattata yanakota pettek indagena gi kaju kanawa. Yeah.
Right. So I had no idea. I thought, whoa, he's making these kids rap right now? And then they know the rap? What is happening here? But yeah, that's one example of the equipment that I use and one particular way of using it. And this is the Symbiosis project is an attempt for us to get to know the kids, for them to get to know us, and eventually working towards building social skills, so that we also teach in the international schools. So we're hoping to work towards finding a space where the students from the different areas can interact in some way and work on those social skills.
Yeah, so on that, how important is it for each of you to look at the performing arts as a means of reducing inequality, for example, or addressing some of the larger social issues? And this is a more personal question. You don't have to necessarily do this, I understand, to be a good performing artist, but just so that, since you're in the panel, I'd like to, how important is this for you?
Krishan,
to create music or your art form, as well as a deep desire or a need to address some of the larger social issues? You want to go first, Krishan?
I was just thinking on cueing you for a bit of a background in hip-hop and how hip-hop does that.
I mean, rap, just to direct it to you, rap has been a very specific form of expression of the challenges faced by the African American people. You are rapping in Tamil, and the Tamil people have faced a particular type of racism today in Sri Lanka over the last several decades. You're coming out of a very difficult situation, and you're facing social issues in Jaffna of a very different type in the Tamil-speaking areas. How does this affect your creative efforts? And how important is this for you?
We obviously wanted to speak about positive messages through music. So J-Town Story was more highlighting on peace and ethnic harmony and correlation between communities. But politically challenging topics I try and avoid in music, simply because, I mean, you get a lot of Tamil rappers in diaspora countries who would comfortably raise certain issues. But I feel as an artist who's here, I should talk about more on the lines of, ethnic correlation, working well within societies, and not just be politically challenging in terms of an artist.
I did mean the social side, not necessarily, maybe I framed the question wrong, but commenting on the social challenge. You did speak about some of your songs.
Yeah, so social issues, like I said, violence against women was a social issue that I picked up. And then this human trafficking where young guys want to go to another country in search of greener pastures. This whole human trafficking is another topic that I'm talking about. Then I'm talking about a new song which highlights the issue of like plantation workers and their children. I mean, how important is education for that community? Because they've been deprived from education. Their lifestyles or their livelihoods are purely dependent on this lady of the house who works in the plantation sector. So I'm trying to create a platform where I bring social messages through my music. So that'll happen in the next few months. And apart from that, I'm also on the platform of creating Tamil rappers around the country. So I'm currently working on a project where I'm getting 12 Tamil rappers on one song. So these rappers will be representing different parts of Sri Lanka, from Batikalo, Trinco, Jaffna, Kilinochchi, Kandy, Colombo. So basically 12 rappers from all parts of the island on one song, because I want to create that movement. I want to create that Tamil rap movement and keep that going, because that's a culture that we started in the early 2000s, and we want to keep that movement going. So,
thank you, Krishan. Larry?
You had a track. Should we try that? Yeah.
We'll.
You'd get to it. Okay. Can you remind me this topic?
I'm sorry.
I've got.
Oh,
sorry.
Yes. Thank you. I say you should be the moderator. Yes, 5 minutes more. One last question from the audience, and then we'll wrap up. Two questions actually, one there, one over here, and then we'll wind down.
Okay, so is it okay if I go first? Right. So I'm from the Cinnamon team, so I'd like to for you guys to think of me as the stakeholder on the other side of the table, right? So remove that label off. So the guy who always wants the return on investment, as Krishan mentioned. Just think of me as a guy who, in the political stream work, tries to get the mileage out of whatever we do. So, but that's not the only hat I've worn. So I know what it's like for this collaboration to work. And Cinnamon Colomboscope is a classic example of that. I mean, over the past 2 weeks, I've had so much fun with Tanya, Radhika, and all of these guys, because we've been. It's not a very smooth process, but it's also how you manage to cater to different people's needs and build that mid-level point for both the artistic, aesthetic values to be maintained and for that to thrive, while also the commercial aspect to thrive at the same point. So one of the examples that I want to use, especially in it, I think affects all the forms of art. how much are you willing to customize, especially when it comes to Sinhala theatre? When you're talking about Vikruti, I mean, is Vikruti the only thing that people can do? Is Singabaus and the Manames, are they the only thing that Sinhala theatre can do? Where is the next Maname? It's been years since the next, Maname was written. Where is the new world contemporary Sinhala theatre? And I believe strongly, especially going to the Rio, if you go today, that we've actually kind of got there with our visual arts, which are with our installations, with our concepts. We do have the next Justin Deraniyagala in the making in a contemporary way. But do we have the next Ediruvira Sarachandra in the theatres? Do we have the next Clarence Vijayawardhanas to some of the other great Sinhala, Tamil songwriters and musicians who can be of that same caliber of popularity, of success, of leaving a legacy, but in a contemporary way? I mean, you can't sing Clarence's songs today. You can't draw Justin's paintings today and expect that to be successful. You can't keep acting Maname today and expect that to be successful. So it's hitting the root of it. It's about how much you're willing to also adapt to change and move forward at a pace which everyone else is moving. Thank you.
We'll take the other question and then you can answer both because we have a few minutes and then we need to wind down. Yes.
Yeah, this is leading perfectly from exactly what he said. Larry being a very good friend of mine, and Kaushalya, you're actually my favorite actress in Sri Lanka.
Thank you.
But you both Larry and yourself keep saying that it's so hard for creative people. Now, this is really a limitation that, creativity is life, okay? And arts, to me, is one aspect of creativity. So I would love to see you in more movies and, basically, I think this limitation of getting out of what creativity actually is, perhaps being more creative, to get out of this limitation so that we can enjoy your work more.
Okay, response and then we'll wind down. You want to respond to that?
Not respond. As you said, what he said was true, but as it boils down to economics, again, for everything there's a price you have to pay. It's not easy making a, if you're like Sarachandra had all the time, he could do whatever the research he did because he was a university teacher, he had a salary, and at that time you could just live with I think my parents said at that time they earned only 125 rupees. My mother was a teacher, and so the life was so simple. It's not easy for any artist today, I think, because it's such a competition and rat race, so everybody's trying to do something good. As you said, I'm also trying to, I'm not a big creative person, but my passion is acting, so whatever the new things that I try to do, sometimes I ended up at the fourth floor, and I was questioned for 5 hours, and so that is how Sri Lanka is. We are facing challenges. We are trying to do some good work. There are a lot of young people who are doing very creative work, but they don't have the means to take it to the people. So that is the problem.
Any last thoughts from you? Thank you, Kaushi. Larry and Krishan, any last thoughts?
Those are very valid points. So obviously, as artists, we need to create the next big masterpiece, and I think that's a very, very valid point taken. So I agreed on that.
Larry, final thoughts?
I guess we are good at complaining in some ways, and we do need to take a bit on more ourselves. Like we can be more productive. We can create things. We create our own reality. We whinge about things, about writer's block and I can't do my work and things. But it's what we've chosen. So we should be able to do it. My approach in the last few years has been trying to be creative with my lifestyle. So a form of surviving as an artist for me has been seeking alternative housing and finding exchanges where I can be housed by my employer or have some other kind of non-monetary exchange. I've tried that here and it's failed. So I need to find a new paradigm for that. And yeah, I guess that is weaving the creativity into your lifestyle and not boxing it in and going, just this is my art.
Thank you very much. And it does appear that the biggest challenge, one of the challenges that we face is that we need to somehow find a means of matching our creativity with our ability to make an entrepreneurial success out of it. So the commercial and the artistic, and that's clearly what's missing. And it does appear that we can't look outside. The government is not going to step in unless we can do something about it. And I believe collaboration could be that element that's been missing between singular theatre, English theatre, other types of theatre, music forms and so on, to kind of get people together to get their head around some of these problems and see whether this can be done in a collaborative way rather than each one trying to fight this battle themselves. And so in that spirit, is it possible for the three of you to collaborate on a little production, so to speak, so that this could be the start of a new type of effort to bring the performing arts to where it should be in Sri Lanka?
Can I get a bit of reverb on?
So shall I sing it?
Yeah.
Uding uding uduguwaning genawa bimim bimim bing tanning genawa apa kotaliya wala genawa riddhi bisau hisa pirana panawa.
Okay. Yeah, can we get a 4/4? A 4/4, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
கணத்திலே கை பதித்தேன் ஆளும் அதங்கத்திலே நான் தவறிழைத்தேன் ரெண்டு உயிராய் தத்தளித்தேன் உன் கோபக்கழு குண்டை வேட்டையாடு இரண்டாம் உயிர் கழித்தேன் பொன்னாபியை நான் வதைத்தேன் நீ மலைத்தேன் எடுக்கும் முட்டவன் பாவை மலைத்தேன் கண்ணாடி நீ கல்லெறிந்தேன் நீ உடைய மறுத்து மிருகம் பிடித்து கடவுள் தேட துடித்தேன் பள்ளினும் பள்ளு பெற கலைத்தேன் பார்த்து நேரம் இங்கு பிழைத்தேன் மெசிமெல்லும் கையெழுத்தில் கடல் கண்டு திகைத்தேன் இந்த நிலையை எனக்குள் என்னை தொலைத்தேன் நிலையுத புகையில்லையுடன்